Hello everybody, it's Tommy and welcome back to another video for the Disney Save. Today is the master renovation video for Henford-On-Bagley. This is my final step in the process of getting all of the things updated for the Disney Save before it was time to move on to Ravenwood. And the last stop was Henford-On-Bagley for just some minor adjustments in my opinion, especially compared to everything else that I have been doing before with basically like full world renovations. That is not what today's video is. It's not what Henford-On-Bagley got in comparison to those other worlds, but I am going to be including all of those Beauty and the Beast builds that I removed from Willow Creek that are now going to be permanently living here in Henford-On-Bagley. Some character updates. Belle from Beauty and the Beast got an update. I did some updates to Snow White and the Seven Dwarves as well as the Enchantress, and just renovated everything, retrofitted some things so that it worked better here in this new world. We are starting out first with the Fallen Rose. The Fallen Rose is my very first build ever for the Disney Save. It's what started it all. It's the build that came to my head that made me decide that this was a project I was going to take on, and it was something that I really wanted to do. And when I put out the Fallen Rose, it got enough traction and enough people interested in it that I felt like I almost immediately, within a couple of videos, had a pretty solid community of people that wanted to see me take this project on. And obviously, it has been so much longer than I could have ever anticipated. I have personally been through so much in the time that the first version of the Fallen Rose existed to now. And the Disney Save itself has gone through so many changes. It has been altered in ways that I didn't see coming. We've gotten packs that I never foresaw us having, but it just brings it all back to the beginning. It's really the thing that kickstarted everything, and I think that because it was such a solid idea from the very beginning, it is one of the reasons that I've had success with the Disney Save, so I have a lot of personal love for the Fallen Rose. Being that this build is something that is my own concept and I designed, and there are references to Beauty and the Beast in the build, but it was not a movie recreation. It was something that I made that felt like it was very much a piece of me with like a splash of Disney, and still having it be successful, because obviously if I make certain iconic builds from Disney, if I make Cinderella's Castle, if I make the Up House, those are iconic, they are recognizable, people will flock to them and they will watch it regardless of if you are interested in the save file and in my project and in me as a person. You will watch those kinds of things, and those things tend to get more recommended randomly to people on YouTube that just randomly watch stuff here and there. But the Fallen Rose is not a movie recreation. It's of my own design, and it was still successful. It still was a really great idea. I knew it was a great idea when I made it, and I was very, very excited about it. And I thought about it for so long, like weeks and weeks, and I did research, and I remember checking to see if anybody else in the Sims community at the time was doing a Disney save file, because at that time save files were like somewhat prevalent and popular. People were doing them. A lot of my fellow like creators at the time were just random builders, and they were not necessarily doing a save file, and I didn't even really know at the time everything that went into doing a save file. Now that I know what I know, I definitely didn't know enough to take it on and to think that I was going to do everything that I thought that I was going to do with the skills that I had at the time and with the knowledge that I had. And I wasn't really even a player of The Sims. I was more a builder. Ever since I got The Sims, I just found the game itself to be a little bit difficult to play, especially at that time. Like when I got the game, we were probably 3 expansion packs in, and I remember playing it and it didn't have that magic that The Sims 3 had, and you had to kind of come up with things a little bit more on your own. You had to set up the story a little bit more. You had to play imagine and play pretend more than The Sims 3 really needed you to do. And I didn't love that, actually. Fun fact about me, when I was young, I used to do this thing, and my sister and I talked about this recently. Very funny little quirk that I had. When I was little, I loved doll houses, and I loved trinkets and toys and furniture and all the stuff that you can put inside of a dollhouse. And so my sister, on the other hand of this, loved the dolls. She loved playing, she loved imagination, she loved like like playing with her dolls. And I loved to decorate and set the scene. So we would set everything up for hours and hours, create this whole little doll village and city and a mall, and decorate everything and put little furniture all over all of our houses. And then it would be time to play, and I couldn't play because I lack the, like, I guess imagination to really get into my characters and like chat with myself and play pretend. Even from a very young age, it's never been my thing. So when The Sims 4 came out, and it did require, especially at that time, especially because this was many, many years ago now, it required that ability to play pretend and to imagine a little bit. It was not for me. So I became a builder, and I got really into building and decorating. And even way back then, when I did the Fallen Rose and the first version of it that I ever made, it was not as good as I thought it was at the time. Like at the time, I was like, this is one of the best things I've ever built. And perhaps it was to some regard because people did really like it and praise it at the time. But I've grown so much as a builder. As I keep telling you guys in all these renovation videos, I'm really excited about my abilities, my skill level, where I've gotten to as a builder. And I feel like because the Fallen Rose was the first one, it finally needed its update. It needed its due diligence. It needed its time to shine, and it needed the upgrade at the end of the day. So what I did here, firstly, if you don't know, if this just happens to be your very first video of mine, the Fallen Rose is a Beauty and the Beast themed library. And the idea is that Belle took a lot of books and some artwork and some stuff from the castle that's kind of withering and wasting away, in the regard that they don't have a huge amount of people that live in the castle, and there is a massive amount of stuff at the library, and they just have all this stuff, this extra stuff that is probably not going to be fully utilized if they don't donate some of it to the community. So after the events of Beauty and the Beast, Belle takes on taking some of that stuff out of the library and creating another library that is for the community, for people to come, be able to read, take out a book. And especially because Beauty and the Beast sort of touches on the idea that girls don't read, or that girls can't read, or even that some of the villagers themselves and the characters don't bother with reading because it's beneath them, I feel she would make this one of her personal special interests that she would really, really want to help like push her community and her villagers and her little people into the right direction. So she takes all this overflow from the castle and she makes a community library for everybody to be able to enjoy. And the actual building itself is created in mirror of the Beauty and the Beast castle. So it uses a lot of the same windows, wall textures, floor textures, wood tones. And even back when I built the very first version, I did say that it was supposed to be a nod to the Beauty and the Beast castle itself, or like an extension or a piece of the castle. However, at the time, I had not built the Beauty and the Beast castle, and I have now, and it exists in this world as the focal point, the big castle for the world right in the middle. It uses a ton of the cottage living stuff, obviously. So what I did, especially to update this build and really make it reflect the castle that it's based off of, I went over to the Beauty and the Beast castle and took a bunch of pictures of all the stuff that I had used. The columns, the doors, the windows, the wood textures, the colors, the garden that I had done around the outside of the castle. I did like a huge rose garden, and I did want to bring some of that over here as well. So all of that, took a bunch of pictures to make sure, same items, because I haven't been here building in Henford-On-Bagley in a while, and I have built that castle several years ago now, so I'm actually not super familiar with like everything that I had used. And I kept this shape and like this castle sort of look that I had originally chosen, and I just updated everything to make sure that the exact same furniture items and things were used in here as they are over in the castle. And to that point, you might think to yourself, especially when we go to the interior here and I do start to pick away at some of the stuff that I had done in there, that when you think of the Beauty and the Beast library, like the one from the castle, there are these floor to ceiling giant blue bookshelves, and that is very iconic. And I did recreate something like that over in the castle. The interior of the Fallen Rose is not exactly like that. To be honest with you, I kind of tried some of the blue bookshelves and things in here, and I really didn't like it. I liked the warm and the gold and the cream colors that were already sort of in existence here, and I think that that is a little bit more royal looking. And when I built the castle, that is a movie recreation, so I want it to look the way that so many people are going to remember it to be, and especially that library is very iconic, so if I didn't choose some of the colors that were chosen in the film, it would be not as great of a build. So I can't really make that adjustment there, but here I felt like it was okay. So it's like same bookshelves, same sort of furniture, but the color interiorly and the color palette that I chose is not going to match exactly with the Beauty and the Beast library in the castle, if that makes sense. And to the point that I was sort of making earlier, my inability to sort of be imaginative on my own, and how The Sims 4 sometimes, especially for people like me, lacks that spontaneity and that set dressing to create stories. That's one of the reasons why I have made the Disney save, and what I am constantly thinking about when I am doing this. The entire project is set dressing for other people's stories and setting up the dollhouse for you and setting up all of the little things for you so that you can play, and it makes me actually want to play this game. And I think that that's something that's really exciting, because when I started, I really had almost no interest in actually playing the game itself, and I knew I was a decent enough builder, and I knew we had enough packs, and I knew I loved Disney enough to pull the project off and to do it and be really interested in it, and hopefully find a community of people along the way that would be interested enough in it with me. And I got all of those things, and it turned out so great. But what I was never expecting is for me to be so excited and actually like playing the game because of what I had made. And sometimes I get really attached to my characters. I actually, fun fact, in every single one of my worlds, I have a sim that I tend to gravitate towards and is like my playtest sim. So behind the scenes, when I playtest the Disney save, I have a sim, and some of you OG from the old days from Twitch are going to know exactly who this is, but I needed a sim that I could always use to playtest the save. And his name is Playtest Pedro, and I found him randomly on the gallery when I was searching on stream one day. He is this little middle-aged man that wears a towel from Spa Day, and he's Playtest Pedro, and I use him as my playtesting sim when I am testing builds that I have made in like my building save file and things like that. But when I actually get inside the Disney save and I need to test something, like there are certain things that you can only test really inside the save itself to make sure it's working, like clubs and relationships and skills and day-to-day or retails. There's so many little things that like the actual save file needs to be live for. So I have sims in every single world that I use, and that's like my go-to sim for that world. So just as an example, Tiana and Naveen are my playtest sims for Willow Creek, and I love them. And they are so fun, and I spend a lot of time with them, and I have spent a lot of time with them. And sometimes you can notice, I think, like when you go through all the sims in the Disney save, you might notice that some of them have maybe a little bit more detail than some of the other ones. And over time, I've been trying to balance that out, but it's inevitable that a few characters are going to be a little bit more important or special. And in Willow Creek, whenever I need to do anything, Tiana and Naveen are my go-to. In Henford-On-Bagley, it's Maurice, believe it or not. I'm not sure if it's because he's a solo sim and he doesn't have a ton going on, so whenever I need to play test something, it's usually like going into the town and making sure that the bar is working or that the NPC roles are working. I replaced the Crumple Bottom sisters in this world with Barbies, and so I had to play test all that and make sure that they were spawning correctly and the game doesn't make two Crumple Bottoms. And so for some reason, I picked Maurice, and now every single time after that I ever need to come into Henford-On-Bagley, he's my go-to. I don't know why. I find him really just like calm, peaceful. He never really does anything weirdly autonomous. He doesn't start fires. He doesn't cook. He doesn't run away. He doesn't start fights with any other sims. I would say that in Mount Komorebi, which to be honest, I don't playtest Mount Komorebi very often. Usually if I'm over there doing something, it is some kind of an adjustment to the Arendelle Castle, because that is such a big build and it does require a lot of maintenance and a strong computer, by the way, because that lot takes a little bit to load. I do tend to use Elsa. I have used Anna also. I feel like if I'm just going to go out and around town, I would use Anna because Elsa's a spellcaster, so sometimes if you need to test like pathing and tell a character like, hey, go here and make sure you can use this chair, she will jump over there with magic, and that's not really the point. I need somebody to actually walk, so I do tend to pick Anna, but occasionally Elsa. In Evergreen Harbor, it's most definitely Eve. Eve is so pretty to me. Like, there's something about her aesthetically that I've always loved. She is another solo sim. Most of the time it is going to be solo sims, especially sims that do not have children, because obviously I don't want like anything messed up if I go take them around town for several hours. But she is a very quiet, very professional. She is an alien, but she never causes any like distractions in terms of that. And she also technically, like, canonically owns one of the restaurants in town. It's not listed under her like restaurant manager, like she doesn't actually own and operate that space, but I feel like she has a lot of ties to the town. I don't know, I gravitate towards her for some reason. And occasionally what happens when I'm using all of these sims and I'm playtesting is sometimes I get like, I go in with a job and some things that I need to do, and I have a little checklist of stuff, and I find myself actually playing and actually going around, and I feel like the Disney Save has finally reached a point where it's very, very playable. There is so much to do, there are so many places to explore, and so many different lot types. I've used like pretty much everything in terms of lot types and systems and all the stuff that the game organically offers. And there are so many more things to come and so many more things that I want to make and things that are missing. Like, don't get me wrong, everybody all the time asks me about Cinderella. It's not going to like not happen. It's definitely coming at a certain point. I know exactly what world it's going into. We just haven't gotten there yet. But I do have so many movies. I have covered so many topics. There are so many different types of families and dynamics at play and different things that are available to do that it has now reached a point of very, very high playability, and it's fun. And that is such a really cool like thing to have accomplished, because even if, God forbid, something happens to me or my life changes in a way that I could not expect it to change, and so for any reason I end up having to abandon the project before it's completed, I at least got it to a point where I am starting to feel like happy and accomplished and feel like it's at a really good state that I want to stand behind and be excited about, and all those sorts of feelings. And it's all because of the Fallen Rose, and it's also because of all of the people that have come or gone or have stayed through the entire thing along the way. I've had some bad eggs, believe it or not. I've had some people come in that are not great for me mentally, that got a little under my skin, that I won't go into all that because it's negative, right? That's not the point. I have made so many more friends than I have ever had bad experiences. I have had lifetime community members. I have had the Disney Save through several jobs, several moves, a move across the world. I literally live in a different country now from when I started this project. I am married now. I met my husband because of the Disney Save, believe it or not. And when I was at the Fallen Rose and I was working on things, just kind of shuffling some stuff around and giving some new bookcases and updating a little bit here and there with fairies, because obviously it's very exciting to have fresh, shiny new pack. I was thinking about all that, and it's a lot to reflect on, and I don't really know, to be honest with you guys, where my life would be if I had not decided all those years ago to do this. I would be just, I would inevitably be in such a different space. And even throughout all of those changes, this has been my constant and my rock and my thing that I always come back to and I always get to do and I always find enough time for. And when I'm bored, like, I couldn't even imagine having another hobby at this point. I have all sorts of other hobbies, believe it or not. I love crafting, I love scrapbooking, I love to read, I love media and movies, and I have this endless list of media that I never ever get to because the Disney Save like consumes all of that, but in a good way. Like, this is my full-time hobby, and when I am bored or I'm in my room by myself or my husband's working an overnight shift and I have a lot of time to myself, I work on this, and I sometimes wonder what would I be doing if I didn't have this. And of course I would find other things, but I'm glad it's this. This is really fun. I feel very fulfilled in where I have gotten to with the Disney Save. My only hope is that The Sims continues to exist in a format that allows me to continue doing this. And I think that's why I wouldn't say like outspoken, but definitely very vocal about a lot of my annoyances and grief with The Sims 4 and with the state of it and with the way that the team that makes it really treats it in certain regards, because I have something to lose, obviously, if this game decides that it's no longer going to be very functional and a lot of people don't care about it anymore. And I'm not saying that I won't continue doing this if people don't care, because I probably will, because at the end of the day, it's more of a passion project than it is anything else. However, it does always feel really nice when you have people to share it with and people to download it and people that send me screenshots of all the things that they're doing with it and all those kinds of things that come with it. But if this Sim Sims keeps on this like trajectory of throwing out all these packs and never updating and fixing this game to the parameters of like really what needs to be done in order for it to maintain another 5-10 year life cycle, whatever they're planning for this game, then I don't know. It would be so much more of a relief to me. And also I feel like I'm not alone in saying that a lot of us are such lovers of what this game is, but also what this game could potentially be if it worked a lot better and if it was optimized a lot better and if they spent more time just fixing the game than they do putting out packs and kits. And the 2 kits every 2 or 3 months is getting very annoying, and them putting out surveys saying, what would you like to see in the game? And here, rate all these things that we could potentially put into the game. And really the only answer you want to give is like, stop putting stuff into the game and just fix it. Make it super functional. Make the packs integrate together in a better format. Make sure that the for rent corruption is not a problem anymore before you do anything else to this game. We all want to enjoy it in the state that it's already in. Like, if it never got another pack ever again, I would personally be okay with that if they spent time fixing it. That would be okay. And then we could go back to buying packs. I'll go back to purchasing, and there's so many things that are coming out, like in the next 2 kits that I saw are a mudroom themed kit and a makeup kit. And on one hand, whenever I see a new kit come out, I'm very excited immediately. More stuff, more little trinkets to decorate my dollhouses with, but I also don't want to put any more money into this game until it works a little bit better. And I'm not alone in thinking that. I am very fortunate that when I playtest the Disney save, I spend enough time with it that I feel like, for the most part, I'm able to work out any issues, but I can never fight the ones that the Sims cannot fix themselves. There's nothing I can do about that. And sometimes as a creator, it's really frustrating because I feel like I spend so much time adjusting the save file to work for the parameters of the Sims, but they're not helping us the other way around. And people sometimes will say like, oh, this lot is not working, or this thing is not working inside your save file. And I get a lot of anxiety over that because I'm like, if I put this out, I want it to work. I want people to be able to use it. And then I go in to have a look at whatever it is that the issue is. And a lot of times it's not my issue. It's usually a issue amongst the game itself, like a bug of some kind, and I'm getting blamed for it essentially. I don't know, you guys. Let me know your thoughts. How many new packs do you think we're going to get before this game just completely crashes? Do you guys buy new kits? Because I feel like I see personally about 50-50 with that. People are really into the kits and love getting a couple new items here and there. Not just the kits, I guess the packs that are coming out more recently, like fairies, things like that. I feel like I have almost 50% of people that I interact with, or that people watch my videos, let's say, are lovers of The Sims, but they don't actively play or participate in The Sims anymore because there is too much broken content that they can't, or maybe their computer can't run it anymore and everybody kind of needs to upgrade, I guess. Or you do buy everything and you play with everything and you're actively a part of the process, and so maybe you fall in that basket, possibly. I'm starting to get a little fatigued about purchasing. I will be honest. I was at a point where I would just buy anything just to have it and have all this new stuff to decorate. And it's such a shame because if you don't know, like, I'm singing the praises of Enchanted by Nature in terms of the items and the stuff that comes with that pack. It's some of the most creative and detailed and very interesting and like new meshes, new, like real true new items that we have received. And the team that created all those pieces, the art team, needs their praises sung. Like, they're just gorgeous little items and I'm very excited about them. And it's more of things that I really would like to see in the future of The Sims. But then at the same time, these kits that come out and people telling me that Enchanted by Nature is breaking their game and it's not working well. And I've seen so many people say that their game is not even opening anymore after purchasing Enchanted by Nature. And so there's that side of the community as well. And it's just really hard. It's really hard as a creator because I make content off of this and I love it so much and I want to keep doing it and I want to be a part of this community and I want to just have all of my things, but The Sims is fighting me along the way. Moving on to Miss Princess Belle. This footage was taken a very long time ago. So if you've downloaded a version of the Disney save in probably the past year, you've already been playing with this updated version of Belle. She got these touch-ups a while ago. And really what happened is I've never loved the version of Belle that I made. I felt like she is a really difficult face mold to replicate. And no matter how many photos of her I looked at and no matter how many different facial structures I tried, I never loved how she turned out. I felt like the version I made of her was was not pretty enough, and she was, I don't know, just like generically pretty, like nothing really interesting about her, but also not done exactly correct. And so funny enough, I would say, actually I don't really know how long ago this was now, but at a certain point, Disney Dreamlight Valley added in Belle. And a similar sort of thing happened with her, which is that they had made a version of her and they went back later and changed her facial structure because they realized it didn't really look like Belle. And I had the same exact problem. I don't know what it is about her particular face shape. She's hard to maybe replicate in a 3D format and she just doesn't translate very well. But when they made that change in Dreamlight Valley, they did such a great job and I loved it so much and I felt like it really resembled her a lot better. And having that version of her is such a great reference for me in terms of a 3D format. So I felt like if I could use the Disney Dreamlight Valley version and change it in mine, it would help a lot and it would look a lot better. And she does. She looks so much better now. And that's really what I adjusted the most, is just her facial structure. And what I was pleasantly surprised about, and this was a complete accident, and I really mean this, when I switched her over to the vampire's yellow dress and I put her in the Crystal Creations hair that is kind of a half up, half down look with her hair tied in the back in a bun, and is one of the only hairs in game that we have that's even remotely similar to her actual hair. So I was adjusting her hair in that outfit and I was fixing that so that she had like a more proper hair for that formal look. I realized she looked so much like Emma Watson. So much like Emma Watson. And I promise you, I did not use Emma Watson as a reference when making the adjustments to her face. It was just something that I noticed had happened in the process. And on one hand, I know that there's like controversy about Emma Watson playing Belle, like people loved her or hated her. I don't really care about any of that, but I felt like I did a better job with her. And if she came out accidentally looking like her, that's the actress that Disney picked to play her in the live action, then that was a really perfect mistake and it made it feel like I ultimately moved in the right direction and made a better choice. And she came out so much prettier. She looks a lot better. Her hair fits her face shape a lot better. And I made some adjustments to her clothes and some updates and things like that. If you see any of my Disney princesses in any video ever and they are wearing a very modern looking outfit, it's usually a nod to their Wreck-It Ralph outfit, by the way, and I get asked quite a bit about doing those outfits. I do them, and every single Disney princess in the Disney Save has a Wreck-It Ralph look. It's usually going to be under their everyday wear as the very last option, or it'll be under their sleepwear. And I did originally used to put this under the sleepwear, but some of them are legit not wearing sleep clothes in that scene. Like some of them are wearing shoes and jeans and things that don't make sense. So I ended up moving it to like the everyday outfit look. Unless it doesn't fit or unless it's like very explicitly sleepwear, then I will put it in the right category. But I get asked about that a lot. I do include it as a cute little detail. And whenever you see an outfit and you're like, why did you put Belle in a button-up white shirt with a yellow sweater? That's why. It's a nod to that outfit that she wears. I think that's like the version of the one that she wears in Wreck-It Ralph. Moving on to a little bit of a renovation on Gaston's Tavern. So this was already here in Henford-On-Bagley. It's on this same exact lot that it was previously on. There's no like big changes in that way. But the reason that I felt like it needed some changes, I already was in this neighborhood looking at everything, and I'm on this like strip in the section of Henford-On-Bagley, so I felt like I'm already here, let's just look at it. And I'm really glad that I did, because this build is as old as my first version of Willow Creek. It used to exist there and be a lot that I had in that world. So when I created it at the time, it would be as old as the Fallen Rose, and so it just needs updating, like majorly. And when I put it into Henford-On-Bagley, I did change it and update it a little bit, but even some of the things that I did to it, I question why I did it. It just didn't turn out all that great. So I felt like it absolutely needed some touch-ups, and it really, really needed to be downsized, because I used to have a huge issue with making builds too big, and I have learned to, hopefully, for the most part, I'm not perfect, but have learned to not do that as much. So since this build was so old, and I can see why when I came to Henford-On-Bagley, I probably didn't want to even adjust the size, because it is a ton of work to get it back to everything being in the right spot and everything. But I just kept staring at it, and I kept going to other builds and and looking at it on the map, and I hated how wide it was, and I could just tell if I could take it down a couple tiles and move everything over and cram it in a little bit more, it would already be such an improved version of the build. And the exterior needed a lot of help. It needed some updates to be a little bit more integrated into the cottage living stuff. It needed to be better put in this particular lot with maybe like some greenery and things added back into it. I don't know, you guys, it was a mess, to be honest with you. Some of the things that I do, sometimes I just come back and look at it and I'm like, I cannot believe that I did that. And this is a really old build, so it had a lot of that. But even when I renovated it for Henford-On-Bagley, it should have gotten some more changes and some more updates done to it back then, and I guess I just didn't do it. So now's the time, and guess what? It just looks so much better. It looks so much better, just a little bit smaller, and making it smaller also cluttered the interior a little bit more, which is something that you would want for a build like this anyway. And the outside looks like it fits into the neighborhood a lot better now. I also used Tool to adjust the sign on the exterior to be a better-ish replica of the one that they actually have. There is like two versions of this that you could technically look at. I believe they do actually show Gaston's Tavern in Beauty and the Beast, but there is a version of this in Disney World. There's possibly it in other Disney parks as well, but that's the one I'm using as like exterior reference. It's the one that you're gonna recognize, I should say. So I thought about the logo, and again, at the time, in early Willow Creek days, I was not using the Tool mod, and even when I learned how to use the Tool mod, it was extremely overwhelming for me, and I could not quite get it, and I could only do very basic things, and rotating an object was like a no. I could not figure that out. I was like, I don't even want to mess with any of that stuff at all. And also, I didn't really understand at the beginning of making the Disney save that I could even use the Tool mod, because one of my things from the very beginning is I want this to be mod and CC free, and so I never thought that Tool was even an option for me, because I thought I'll make all of these builds with Tool, and then you have to have the Tool mod installed in order for them to appear correct in your game. But that's not true about Tool. If you take Tool out of your game, or if you download one of my builds off of the gallery and I've used the Tool mod, you do not need to have Tool installed for it to show up correctly. And I did not know that for a very long time. I don't believe it was until I started live streaming that people started recommending it to me, as well as the build and buy catalog, whatever you want to call that, that allows me to see all those hidden objects and the live added objects and debug and stuff like that, and have it be more labeled. Organized debug, I believe is what it's called. I thought I couldn't use any of that stuff because I was like, it's gonna mark it as custom content, or like, I don't know, an altered build, or it's not gonna appear correctly when other people install it. And then I was told that that wasn't true. So I started to teach myself very lightly, but I had already been out of Willow Creek by that time. I think I was just finishing with Forgotten Hollow, which I think was my third world. So pretty much anything before that never had Tool originally touched on it. And I want to just mention, by the way, that I am not like very good at Tool even now. I know the very basics. I can rotate and move objects. I don't even know how to duplicate. That's like something recently that I'm like, I need to learn how to. I can duplicate a cluster of objects, but what I'm talking about specifically is I've seen people able to duplicate in like a circle and create like a perfect circle of objects and like turn it at a perfect angle. There are ways to do all sorts of really cool things with Tool. I don't know how to do any of that. My usage of Tool is very surface level, and if you're ever worried about me using Tool when it comes to builds, I honestly would not be that concerned because I use it so sparingly. Like, what I'm usually using it for is to maybe rotate something on a very weird angle occasionally, and most of the time what I'm using it for is to get things to sit perfectly on shelves that I should otherwise not be able to get to that exact height. And that's pretty much it for the most part. Obviously, some people don't like to have or use Tool builds in their games, and that's totally understandable. That's fine. But just to say that I don't really use it anything crazy, but it was nice to be able to update this a little bit with Tool, because what I could do was rotate the barrel that's supposed to go on the exterior of this for the sign out front, and maybe some stuff like that for this build. Since it's so community-based at Gaston's Tavern, and I feel like it's the place that everyone in town would go in the evenings, and it's very small town vibes, especially in Henford-On-Bagley. So this is like the Stardew Valley Tavern, right? Like, this is where everybody is in the evenings. I wanted there to be a lot of places places to sit, not just inside, but on the exterior as well, and some additional fireplaces and little fire pits and things for characters to be able to approach this, I guess, a little bit more in a park kind of aspect so that it feels more community-based. And there is a additional grill outside, so you could do a lot of things here at Gaston's Tavern. Shout out to my husband, actually. He's gonna love getting the credit for this because this is very clever. One of the things about Gaston's that's always bothered me is that bar lot types do require you to have a TV, very unfortunately. And obviously because I'm doing a Beauty and the Beast build, I don't want to put a TV here. And I don't even want to put what I did originally in the very first version of this. I hid the TV behind some barrels, but the Sims, because they can turn the TV on with a remote, they still used it. And so they would just stare at the corners of the barrels and stuff where I had hidden the TV, and I hated it. It's not what I want. It's not the vibe. There should be no TV here anyway. So eventually I created a little basement floor and I put the TV down in the basement. So it still fills the lot requirement, but the Sims cannot get to it in any regard, and so they don't use it. And that is something you can do if you need to fulfill a requirement. I did that recently, actually. I renovated the Beauty and the Beast village to be a recreation center, and that is not included in today's video. It's something I just kind of did on a whim. And one of the things that was required for the rec center is gym equipment. There are a few gym equipment pieces in game that I felt like could have worked for Beauty and the Beast, and I could have hidden and done in really like tactful ways, but the game was not allowing me to use those particular ones, those like older ones or some of the werewolves type of ones that are a little bit more beat up in the build. So it really wanted me to use like modern gym equipment, and I just couldn't have it. I'm so sorry. So now they're in the clock tower, like hidden, sized down, very small under some barrels. And that's like something you could do if the object is not interactable in that way. Like if they're not going to have a remote to turn it on from a distance, for example, and you want to fill the lot requirement and keep it using that lot type, you can put it in a different room that's inaccessible. But the TV really wasn't working for this lot, and he said to me, why don't you just put the TV in the fireplace and hide it like tucked in the fireplace so you can't see it, but what the Sims are gonna do is look at the fireplace and like cheer and get excited and turn the TV on and like gather around the fireplace. And that's brilliant. I loved it. I'm like, yes, immediately, you're so right. That's the vibe I'm looking for. I would love an object for the Sims in the game to congregate around the fireplace anyway and sit on that side of the tavern, since that is right next to Gaston's big famous chair that has his little antlers and stuff above it that you probably remember from the movie. It's tucked in the same corner as the fireplace, so to have all the Sims congregate to that side and cheer and watch sports and interact, but you don't have to see the TV and like physically deal with that, and the visuals of it, perfect. Loved that. So that basement floor was removed. The TV is now hidden in the fireplace. I will mention my Gaston painting above the fireplace. Immediately, I know some of you are going to clock that. That is not custom content. That painting was created when the Sims 4 used to have the ability to make custom paintings that did not get marked as custom content. You had to do it in a very specific way with, I think, a copy of the Sims 4 Legacy Edition, which I used to have and probably still do have, but for some reason my EA app doesn't allow me to access it. And you used to be able to do that to essentially make like custom paintings, but the game wouldn't recognize it as CC. And obviously people were doing nefarious things with that and doing things that you shouldn't be doing with that, and then uploading them to the gallery and being inappropriate with it. So it got taken away from us because people can't be good. But I had already made that painting a very, very long time ago. And now I'm kind of grateful that I did do that, because if the painting was made before it was patched out, it still works as CC free. And so this build goes live on the gallery and it is still marked as CC free. And when you use it, it's not going to ping as custom content in any way, but it is technically, I guess, it has a custom painting in it. It's one of those moments in Disney lore where you really need to have the exact painting, and it just makes the whole build, and it makes it look so much better and more authentic. I wish that I had maybe spent a little bit more time getting a better dimension on the painting. It's a little tall and stretched. Beggars cannot be choosers anymore in this circumstance. I'm just glad to have one at this point. So unlike back in Willow Creek when I did the library, and if you guys watched all of that, you know that I have two versions of that library, one that basically has custom paintings and one that does not. This is not one of those scenarios. I am re-releasing this on the gallery with the custom Gaston painting, and it's not going to flag for custom content, which is always very exciting. I think I have a couple of other builds in the Disney Save where this is still true. I believe Maleficent's castle has some paintings or portraits that I had done of her in her castle that are also created at a similar time as the Gaston painting. And there might possibly be some paintings of Anna and Elsa's parents in the Arendelle castle, although don't quote me on that because I'm not sure if I ever actually got around to that. Something that was very exciting about updating this tavern is when I made it, we did not have any true animal fur type rugs, which is actually really important considering that one of Gaston's unfortunate activities is hunting. So he has this whole place decked out in animal skins and animal furs. And at the time I used what we had in game, which was like, honestly, it was either cats and dogs or the My First Pet stuff rugs. And some of them are very generically shaped like maybe cats or hamsters. And it's just all we had. It's never anything that I really wanted to have in here, and it was always a placeholder. And then thankfully with Lovestruck, we did get some of these. I think they're picnic blankets. Technically, you can interact with them, but you can actually just walk over them normally as well, and Sims will use them like any other rug, so they don't create pathing issues, and so you can place them down in seating areas and use them in the way that they're intended to be used according to the Gaston Tavern that I'm replicating. And I did go over to the Brave Castle and add some of those. Of course, I feel like that is an obvious thing. I'm gonna be going back to the Brave Castle and updating again at another point. And I probably mentioned this in the last video if you watched the chapter 3 bookstore speed build, but I'm just gonna reiterate that basically what's going on with Henford-On-Bagley right now, I am at a point where I really need to move on to Ravenwood, and I'm excited to do so. And I also know that in the back of my mind, everybody is like itching for me to also get to Innisgreen and do the fairies world and the fairies update. So I need to move on, and I don't really have the time to spend in Henford-On-Bagley right now and touch up all of my castles. That would be the Brave Castle and the Beauty and the Beast Castle and the massive build that is the Belle's Village and all that stuff. So as much as I would maybe like to take another couple of weeks and just go over everything and do some updating, I also realize that I am going to have to come back to this world and update it with fairies anyway, because a lot of the fairies items work really, really well with the Henford-On-Bagley stuff. So what I essentially did is renovated this neighborhood down here. I did the Fallen Rose. Chapter 3 bookstore is completely brand new. Gaston's Tavern, huge renovation. Gothel Cottage is also in this neighborhood, and that one also received a huge renovation that is included in today's video. And then the other brand new build is Enchantress's Cave, the Enchanted Cave, and some cast updates for her. So that stuff all got touched. It's basically one neighborhood in Henford-On-Bagley. Everything else I may have to come back and look over at a certain point, and I would like to, but I'm gonna wait until it's time to do the fairies overhaul on the Disney Save, which is gonna take me a bit of time anyway, so I'll come back here and fix some of that at that point. So Henford-On-Bagley is kind of in like a 50% renovated stage. I'm pretty much half done with just looking everything over and maybe updating a little bit, especially for fairies, but also just in general. I feel like I have this itch right now where I really want to get some of my builds into a little bit better of a position and just get, I don't know, more on theme, more detailed. It depends on what the build actually is, and some of them don't need it. Trust me, like I've looked them over, but I did look at the Brave Castle and I realized that there are some things about it that I would like to update, but I'm not doing it yet. I'm gonna come back to this world and give it another look and touch up some of those characters and do some pack updates. And with all that being said, I'm not going to be doing a tour video, or I should say a new tour video for Henford-On-Bagley with these changes included, because I feel like it's going to change again sometime in the near future, so it doesn't really make sense for me to do a tour and then change it in another 6 months. I really think what I'm going to end up doing is probably do another master tour video that's very long and goes over everything, considering that Willow Creek has been completely redone. I think when I made the master tour video, there was no Oasis Springs, which is another huge base game world with a ton of detail, and I made so many changes obviously to Forgotten Hollow, and now we're going to have Ravenwood as well by the time I'm done with that. So I think maybe sometime after fairies I might do a new tour video, and that's probably what's going to make the most sense. Can I just tell you guys that in personal stuff right now, it is so hot in London, and I know that so many of my fellow Americans will scoff at that when I say that, and I get it. Ladies and gentlemen, I totally get it. I'm on like both sides of the fence. I'm not even going to get into that whole debate because it's really just this like weird back and forth that doesn't even need to exist. However, it is so hot here and I am so sick of it. every single summer that I have spent in London, I am like hoping that I can somehow make it my last. I don't know how, I don't know where I'm going, but I swear to you, every summer I spend here makes me feel like I should move because I just can't handle the heat. I hate it so much. I have often thought that when I go to Disney World, how can people live in Florida? If you live in Florida, I cannot even fathom how you're doing that. And I mean that with like genuine sincerity. I have been there, I think during the summer technically once, and then I was there in October and it was scorching 110-degree weather almost the entire week that I was there. And I have never just questioned humanity ever more. Like I cannot even imagine how people live in that kind of weather, and I would have to move. I've thought so many times about how I could move to Disney and I would be just so happy and it would be such a cool thing. And actually, fun fact about me, when you're in the earlier stages of high school and some of the teachers and things start to say to you, what do you want to do when you grow up, or what do you want to do for a living? And you're not really sure, but you're starting to try to think about it on your own a bit. One of the things that I floated, and one of the ideas that I really thought about, really truly, is that I wanted to work for Pixar or Disney Animation, Walt Disney Studios, and be an artist because I can draw and paint. And at the time, one of the reasons I didn't pursue that is because they never taught animation in like a digital format. And so I could like draw, but I didn't know how to draw on an iPad or draw digitally. But one of the things that stopped me from like really truly pursuing that is I could never see myself living in Florida. And obviously at that time, they didn't have this concept of maybe working remote or working for the studio from a different state, even possibly. That really wasn't a thing. So I used to really think that that was the only job I ever really wanted to do, was do animation for Disney or Pixar. And I never even attempted to pursue it because I can't handle heat at all. It's so hot. I don't know how people live there. And now moving to London, me being American and just not knowing anything about living here until you actually do, or traveling here until you actually do, I always thought it was like the movies and it was just going to be this beautiful, just very moderate temperatures. And I guess you could say that for most part of the year it is. And in comparison to American heat, it is moderate, but it just cooks you alive here and there's no reprieve from it. And I'm getting so sick and tired of it. Last time I was here for like a whole summer, because a lot of the times I travel or go away during the summer, or I don't know, if something comes up in my circumstances that I'm not actually here, I'm always so grateful that I'm not here in London for the heat. And I've been here all summer now with only a little bit of a break when I traveled recently to New York. And I just never ever want to experience this ever again. When I move into a different living situation, which hopefully is coming up in the next like year-ish for me, I'm setting my whole place up with AC. I'm so sorry, like strapping it to the windows, fans in every corner. I'm so sick of the heat here and it makes it really hard to record videos. Today is my day to record. I usually set aside like one day a week to maybe do some audio, do some TikToks and stuff. And it just so happens to be one of the hottest days of the year. My computer is frying as we speak. Really not good. I'm sweating, I'm cooking, I'm gonna have to go take a shower after this. It's really bad. And just for like my particular situation, my bedroom faces the sun like 90% of the day and there's no shade or cover from it whatsoever because my one single fan that's like helping to bring in any kind of like calmer temperatures is sitting in the window, blowing in some kind of air so that I have circulation in here. It's just really bad, you guys. I really think sometimes that I would thrive in California weather because they do get some of the warmth, but whenever I see the girlies out at Disneyland, even sometimes in summer, I see them wearing like sweaters and sweatshirts and like layers. And I always wonder how that could ever be possible because as somebody who's never been to California, and I'm going this year, so I'm very excited, I'll learn, I'll know, but I always thought of California as maybe just as hot as Florida. And I think it is, but it's like a different kind of hot is my understanding. I don't know. People let me know. If you're from California, let me know. But I always see people wearing layers in like their Disney vlogs. And I think to myself, how is that possible in California, even during the summer, but it's not the same as Florida? There's just no way. It can't be. Now, Gothel Cottage. This build is a little unique for the Disney Save. It is something that comes from the Tangled animated TV show that ran on Disney Channel. And as I've stated before, I don't do a ton of Disney Channel here on the save file. However, this was definitely one that I did bring in. It was very, very highly requested by my community. I had tons of people and patrons that were lovers of this show. And I never watched the full show, but it was like like highly recommended to me. I still would love to be able to do that. I believe my husband has seen quite a bit of it, and he was like telling me about it even at the time that I was building this. And I know that when I built this originally, I watched all of the scenes that this particular cottage is in. So this cottage, from what I remember, is Mother Gothel's cottage. Her daughter Cassandra lives here or grew up here, and Mother Gothel would kind of like disappear or go away for various amounts of time, obviously because she was doing other things, but she had her own daughter, and this is where they lived. So this is technically their canonical home, and I wanted her to live in the tower with Rapunzel because they do live here in Henford-On-Bagley, but it was still a really cool shell and a cottage at that to be able to include in this world where it is the cottage living world, and you want to have a couple of cottages as options. So in an effort to make more spaces in the Disney Save that are more vacational and places that you can use if you are using one of your personal Sims, or if you want to move and shuffle some Sims around, if you download a Cassandra off of the gallery, because I've never made one of her, although I am planning to in the future, and you wanted to do like that whole storyline, then the cottage is here for you, and you could have her and Mother Gothel move in here potentially, or if you want to kick her out of the tower with Rapunzel and give her some other place to live, this is an option for her in that regard as well. So it's a show replica, and when I came in here, I hated it. I looked around and was just like, I could remember all the details and like why I had done certain things. Like I was looking at shelves and I remembered me putting that item on that shelf and thinking even at the time that it was a little bit of an odd choice, but I probably picked it because I was actually replicating whatever I was seeing on that shelf as according to the show. And there were little things that I remembered. I remembered certain chairs and certain mirrors and things that I had chosen, and definitely the layout of certain rooms. So I understood why I made those choices, but at the same time, it felt really lifeless in here and not like lived in at all, and not the home of maybe a potential child having been raised in. So even though I think it would be a vacation rental and I'm using it in the save file in that way, it's not a very nice vacation rental. So I wanted to spruce the place up a bit and add some more stuff, give it some more life and clutter. I wanted to still maintain a lot of those original things that I had done in order to make it a show replica, and so I didn't want to change the layout and like the particular furniture. But if you change the colors around and give a little bit different clutter and just updates, and especially add in some fairies and some greenery, it starts to come to life a lot more. It utilizes the space a lot more. It feels like a proper cottage in here. It's very warm and welcoming. And one of my things about this lot actually is that it's supposed to be kind of welcoming in a deceiving kind of way. I do not remember exactly what happens in the Tangled TV show to Cassandra. I just can't remember, and I didn't watch the show. But I do remember kind of her story and like what happens to her in this cottage, or that she comes here and has like a very terrible scene and a terrible thing sort of happens here. So I think there would be a dark aura here, especially of like a child that was raised in an environment that was not super living. So it is like a family home and a childhood home, but the child that was raised here did not get the attention and the love that they deserved. And so you almost like don't want it to be too kind and welcoming and like such a cozy space, because you're like, how could a child have such a rough upbringing in this type of an environment? But on one hand, that happens all the time, right? That's really a real thing that happens. You go inside a space and the people living there are not in good spaces and they're not having a good life, but their environment would not necessarily reflect that. And also, that adds to my point in some regard that I wanted this cottage to be deceivingly nice and approachable. And so if you imagine that you're looking for a place to stay in Henford-On-Bagley and you're scrolling through Airbnbs and this one pops up, it's a beautiful little cottage with its own pond, and you might just think to yourself that it's so perfect. And when you come here, it has some lot traits that are spooky. It's a vampire nexus because Mother Gothel is a vampire in the Disney Save, and it's not as nice as it appears from a distance. Maybe even the locals in town know the story of Cassandra and they kind of know what happened, or they know Mother Gothel and they know she owns this place. So they know that it's not a very nice place, and it's like just deceivingly creepy. So by adding the warmth and the clutter and some of the greenery and details back in and just making it feel more lived in, it would feel very approachable and comfortable in here. But then again, like I said, if you know, you know kind of a vibe. I've been in lots of homes where it is so beautifully decorated and comfortable, but you still feel eerie about the place that you're in. Maybe haunted, maybe a little bit spooky. I've lived in a few homes that are like nice, quote unquote, but then there's just something about them that doesn't sit right in your stomach, and you feel like you are being watched all the time, and the mirrors are a little bit creepy, and it's not like anything about the house in particular that does it to you. Like if you rearranged it, it's not going to do anything. It's the house itself. It has like a bad aura. One of the things about this cottage that was very particular is there is one bedroom, and so Mother Gothel and Cassandra probably shared this bedroom, and I believe I am replicating the bedroom from the TV show as well, so this was probably shown, but she has a round bed that's tucked in the corner of the same room that Mother Gothel lives in, and or it is supposed to be a two-bedroom cottage, and I just combined it into one bedroom. I don't believe that that's what I did, but I cannot remember off of the time. So when we do go into the bedroom, you'll notice that there is like a weird round chair in the corner, and then there's some drapery above it, and I am going to fix it so that it looks a little bit nicer, but that is supposed to be Cassandra's bed, and then the red bed is Mother Gothel's bed, and they share a bedroom, I guess, but you can't actually use that round bed as a bed in game. I believe you actually can't even sit on that, and I don't do that all the time. I try to make everything very, very playable, and I want you to be able to get to all the chairs and mirrors and beds and everything, but if I left something for aesthetics, but it's not interactable, then I do occasionally do that, and I feel like this is an instance where it's okay, because it's a round bed, and we don't have round beds anyway. I wish we did. It's actually one of my like big items that I wish The Sims would bring in, is maybe some like odd shaped beds, not even just round, like anything. I would love, can you imagine a clamshell bed? You're kidding me. That would be like a game changer for me. Please give me mermaid kit with clamshell bed. That's exactly what I want. Can you imagine like a funky sort of water bed that is not shaped as perfectly as the ones that we have in game, maybe a little bit more of an organic beanbaggy sort of shape, and just a round bed? That's some stuff that I would definitely like to see, and then maybe I would come back in here and fix it a little bit if the tile's allowed. But all that to say, when you go in this bedroom, you can sleep in the big bed anyway, so it doesn't really matter, but that other one tucked in the corner, although is like inaccessible in regards of sleeping, it's still it's a nod to the TV show, which is why it's in here ultimately. And we do not have a lot of, what do you call those? Like the drapery that hangs over the bed. I don't really know what you would call that, especially if it's in the round shape. But we did get in the, what's it called? The circus kit, the children's circus kit for little kids' bedrooms. They did give us one piece that hangs on the wall that is kind of like that. And I was able to use Tool to just scale it just a little bit so that it makes sense for the shape and the size of the one that I had tucked in this room. If you want a functional round bed, because there is ways to do that, I did that over in the Agrabah Palace, and I have a TikTok on my account that tells you how to make it, like an actual tutorial, but I did talk about it over in like the tour video and the speed builds for that. So there are ways to do it, but it was not aesthetically going to work for this build no matter what, and honestly, it would have been too big. There are actually several mirrors in this build that you can't go up to and use. So again, like I have mentioned, I do really like to make everything accessible, but sometimes if there's like 5 mirrors in a build and you can't get to one of them because I've cluttered something right in front of the mirror, it's kind of intentional. It's not really an accident on my part. At that point, you can get to a mirror somewhere in the build, so you don't need to get to that mirror. Does that make sense? And I did use fairies in here. I am guilty. I did bring in some of that greenery. I talked about this when I did Chapter 3 Bookstore, but the draped greenery and the vines that they put in with that pack, it works really well for a lot of the cottage living builds anyway, so it's going to end up popping up here and there whenever I go to re-renovate this world, but also when I was doing the renovations for this. And for like the Enchantress and stuff, of course, it's going to pop back up. However, just in general, it just looks good in here, and I felt like it did help liven the place up a little bit. And she is a little bit more of a magical sim, so you can have that greenery that almost doesn't make sense, like where is it coming from? But there is a lot of that on the exterior of the cottage itself. Also, there is a lot of greenery, a lot of bushes, a lot of growth coming from the roof. It's possibly a very old house where some of of that natural life and greenery is seeping its way into the interior in a really kind of like comforting way. I'm trying not to overuse fairies because everything is very exciting and new and shiny, but at the same time, it works really well here in Henford-On-Bagley, and there's certain worlds where it's going to come up, and this happens to be one of them. Now, as we transition into the next thing here, I want to just reiterate, because I think that this is going to be a little bit confusing, but there is some footage in here of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs getting a little bit of a cast update, and this was filmed a long time ago, again, around the same time that I did the Beauty and the Beast, like, Belle update. So I kept that footage, and I figured when I came back to do some renovations here, I would throw it in to some kind of a master renovation video like this one. However, just to reiterate, Snow White is getting taken out of this world and moved to Ravenwood. But I wanted to put it in here because I felt like, number one, I wanted to show you guys some of the updates, especially to the dwarves. They all got new hats from the Life and Death pack that feel like they were just made for these characters, and they're such a better choice compared to the knit caps that I had them in before. And I wasn't sure where else to put the footage. Like, you probably would have never seen it otherwise. They're already in the game like this as of a few updates ago anyway, but I'm not planning at this time to make any kind of like a master renovation video for Ravenwood because that world is brand new and I'm going to be doing it from scratch anyway. So where would I put it otherwise? And it was already like amongst my Henford-On-Bagley things because they did previously used to live here. We're actually going to be going to their lot very shortly, the one that they used to live on. So a little bit confusing, but just to reiterate, they are no longer going to be living in Henford-On-Bagley. I just wanted to show you guys some of the updates that they got. There is a good possibility that when I do officially move them over to Ravenwood and take a look at the cottage and update the cottage for that world, that I go back into Cass and update them as well and just take a look and make sure everything's all good since I'm already there with them anyway. And that will be happening. Anything that was Snow White related that got moved over, so that's going to be the cottage and Happily Ever After are both moving to Ravenwood. They are going to be getting updated for that world, new foliage, new things that fit really well in the decor over there. Make sure that they fit to the lot type and the lot like shape and everything. So that'll be happening, but there are some new things that are Snow White coming over there as well. They're getting their own little neighborhood. That's kind of my new thing that I like to do if possible. I love when the neighborhoods are condensed into little towns and I can make them all themed after the same movie. So whenever that is a possibility, it is usually going to be, at least for now, the direction that I go. I really love how it turns out and I feel like it looked really great in every world that I've made it happen. So I love doing it. And that means there's going to be a Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs world. So those are not going to be the only two things over there. We're going to be getting a castle, of course. I believe Snow White's castle is actually the prince's castle, but it's the one that gets like attached to her name. And I think that's the one that I'll be building. And then some other stuff, obviously, that I don't want to spoil. Some other movies, very excited about. Some big ones. Some ones that are a little bit smaller and not as popular. And I've mentioned a lot of what's going over there already. If you go back through my videos, you'll be able to piece a lot of it together because I have mentioned it and maybe even left some comments here and there. Sometimes you guys are asking me if a new movie is coming in like a different world, and a lot of the times in the comments I'm really honest about it. It just depends on what you're asking. And now as we trickle towards the end of the video today, we are taking a look at the Enchanted Cave. This is the Enchantress's home. It is a very old build. This was a part of the first version of Willow Creek yet again, and it probably did not get very many changes over the course of the few years that I've been doing the save file. It was in existence over there up until like very recently because the Enchantress still lived over there. She didn't make the original cut to move into Henford-On-Bagley when I moved all of the other Beauty and the Beast stuff because I wanted to do Tangled here and Brave and Snow White. There wasn't room for all of my Beauty and the Beast stuff, and I also at the time really didn't know what else I could have done over in Willow Creek. Even if I wanted to remove the Enchantress and the other Beauty and the Beast stuff, I really felt like there wasn't anything to replace it with, so I left it there out of like necessity at the time. However, with all these changes, made space and the Enchantress could finally live over here with all of the other characters. I had originally said in several other videos that I wasn't sure if she was going to be a townie, and that was because there was another lot that was in potential running to go here, and if it had gone here, it was going to be Brave themed, so I wasn't sure about that. I couldn't remember what I had ultimately chosen, and then I updated her and I took a look at her and I just loved how she turned out, and I felt like it made the most sense to really keep her in the save and have her be this like really powerful spellcaster that's into apothecary and curses and roses and gardening and all of the stuff that's like in the spellcaster realm, but also leaning towards fairies and leaning towards a lot of the magic that we got in that pack in that way. So she is kind of a mix between those two worlds. And she's also a younger solo magic user sim. She lives with lots of animals. I don't have really a household like her, so taking her away would have felt like a little bit of a loss that I wasn't willing to let go of. And when I was reorganizing this world and kind of planning out what we could potentially do to shuffle some things around, I knew that I was going to take Snow White's cottage out. That was like an absolute definite. So figuring out what to replace it with, it really makes a lot of sense to do something like this that's a cave home in the middle of the woods. And being that she is a bit of a loner and very reclusive and maybe not as much a part of the rest of the village and a part of it in that kind of a way, having her home be still in this world, in the Beauty and the Beast world, but removed from the central village makes a ton of sense. The other reason that this is such a good pair over is because just to the south of this lot is another residential. It's the witch's cottage from Brave, and she lives in this kind of hobbity home sort of house cottage. So they pair together really nicely, and actually they pair together so nicely that I decided it was the move, especially because the exterior of this home is so old, and I made this cave that I really wasn't happy with anymore to transition it into more of a Hobbit home-esque type of build. And it was similar to the witch's cottage, like a very similar shape, very similar with the roofing and all the greenery, and so in a neighborhood kind of way. And when you're looking at the map, they sort of pair well together, and you have two different characters from different movies, but it makes sense for both of them to be in a home like that. So it fits really well to do it like this. Hers has rock textures and rock wallpaper, so it is more of like a true cave, whereas the other one is just greenery and kind of coming out of the earth. This one is maybe a little bit more handmade, but it helped to link the two builds and make them look really nice together and make them fit well into the neighborhood. They look just like they fit aesthetically, and it gives her a home that it's not shown in Beauty and the Beast, and there's nothing to go off of, so I really can do whatever I want here. So instead of doing that ugly cave that I did before, I can do a little Hobbit home, which I'm sure most of you are going to appreciate a lot more. The downstairs is not going to get altered all that much, actually. It's really just the upstairs. And if you notice anything strange in the footage, I want to mention, unfortunately, I did the entire top floor, all the greenery, all the rock and terrain painting, everything on the upstairs, and I was really happy with it, and everything was going super well, and I just forgot to save, of course. Tale as old as time. And when I went to go alter the cave itself, I think because it was such an old build, the game absolutely froze and crashed on me, and I lost the entire hours plus worth of work that I had done. I was very distraught about it because it just came out so perfectly the first time, and I came back into the game very angry. I was not even gonna fix it right then and there. I was pretty much gonna be done for the day, but I decided I had just enough steam to maybe get it back to the point that I had done before in the footage. But that's why it jumps from like the cave home previously to this new Hobbit home version. I lost some of the footage and the game froze and knocked me out. It's actually happened to me before. Fun new bug. Not really sure specifically what this is, but occasionally if you try to place a roof down or draw a wall, it will not place, and then the game freezes. And from that point forward, I think because it can't load whatever you're trying to put in, it just endlessly loads, and then you're stuck there. And unfortunately for me, I just hadn't saved anything, so I had to redo the whole thing. And that means that the final version, like the pathing and all the trees and where everything is individually placed, it's probably not the same as the beginning of the footage. But it all works out. It's okay. And I learned my lesson over and over again to just save constantly. One of the reasons I don't save all the time is because I feel like you guys don't want to see me saving in the footage. Like, it takes a second and then I have to edit it out. So I try to do like large chunks where I don't save so that I can just make it easier for me in terms of editing, but that's really silly. So I lost half of the build. We rebuilt it. It looks really good. It turns out more like a Hobbit home. And I did put a shelf out front that has a lot of some gardening and those little like planters that are individual that you can put your own plants into, and then Sims can tend to and water them from there. I am going to be using these in several different ways in the future of the Disney save, but obviously in a perfect world, if the planters have the ability to slot plants into them, which they do, it would be great to be able to slot all of the plants in game into them. And so if we had like a rose that you could plant, which we might, I don't actually know, and you could grow one and then slot it into that slot, that would be super great. But when I was looking through debug, I couldn't find a rose that would slot into the planter. So I just put some in there that are like mimicking liking that idea, they're ones that are like already in a vase or something like that. So in that way, you're not going to be able to use the planter. So when I say I'm using them in different ways, sometimes they're going to be really, really interactable so that you can go up and actually utilize the gardening aspect. And there are a couple on that table upstairs that you can interact with. But then there are some that are meant to be more decorative, and those are going to be the ones that have the roses or the plants already slotted into them. I did make sure to give her the apothecary table. This has to do with creating new medicines and ailments, and there's a whole like ailment system that got added to the game, and I feel like she is definitely the type of character that would be into that because she curses an entire castle filled with people, and you could almost call that, or I guess you could almost call a curse an ailment in a similar sort of vein. It depends on what it is, obviously, but she is just the specific perfect type of spellcaster that would dabble in that kind of a thing. And again, I want to be careful about not having like all of my spellcasters be into that because I feel like it would be a really easy tie over, and it is something that is specific to fairies, so it makes more sense if some of my fairies characters lean more in that direction. But just thinking about the future of the Disney save and a lot of the fairies that are going to be coming up in the very near future, like for example, the Pixie Hollow Tinkerbell fairies, I don't really see them personally as being like too into that. It depends on maybe what branch of Pixie Hollow they're a part of, but I don't think that that's going to be appropriate for like all of them. Whereas she's a spellcaster, yes, but she would probably have a high apothecary skill. She's into greenery and gardening, and I did clutter up her downstairs with a bit more of the fairy stuff and update some stuff down here, the different floor textures and fairies greenery pieces and some of those branches that are doubling as lights. Those are super great for my downstairs underground cave home. It does have me thinking about a home that is going to desperately need some updating for fairies, and that is going to be the Lost Boys Lookout over in Sulani. That is a bit of a Tinkerbell inspired build because she has a bedroom there. They all live underground in this very natural looking branches and trees and sticks. Like it's supposed to be in a very similar vein as this build. And it, at the time of building it, I just remember to myself, we really need more stuff like this that helps to make it feel more lived in and more like a home, but also like everything is just made of the dirt and the greens, and we don't have stuff like that, especially at that time. So getting the fairies pack, obviously I'm going to go back and fix Tinkerbell, obviously. And Periwinkle is in the save too, her sister. So they're going to be getting updates when it comes time to do the fairies update. But that is one build that immediately came to mind, and I know I have to go back there and touch that up and update Tinkerbell's bedroom. I would not be surprised. I know this is very far in the future, so don't quote me on this exactly, but I wouldn't be surprised if Tinkerbell is no longer a part of that household anymore. She'll probably make more sense to have a move herself, but she can still have her bedroom over there, and I feel like her going back and forth between the two places or having the potential to be moved between the two households is going to work for her, so that'll be fine anyway. And then lastly, for the end of the video, I did do some updating to Miss Agatha Gray. She is the enchantress, and as mentioned, she's only shown very briefly in Beauty and the Beast as stained glass. So when I made her, I didn't have any great reference. I ended up using the live action and the actress that portrays her as the main sort of casting for her. However, Disney has in more recent years come out with a card game called Lorcana, and Lorcana has a couple of enchantress cards, and some of those are showing her off in a little bit more detail as far as her facial structure and some of the like details on her face that make her replicatable, because otherwise I would just be doing stained glass, and everyone looks similar enough in stained glass in that regard. So it just really was not a great reference, and I used that other actress, and she is quite a bit older than I believe the enchantress is intended to be portrayed in Beauty and the Beast. So I actually aged her down, and I used the Lorcana cards as reference. I gave her a little bit different of a face shape, although her original face shape is still very much there. She got an official new green, beautiful dress from Fairies. Very pretty, very, very fitting for her, considering that that's probably the look that you recognize her the most with. And then I did adjust some of her other outfits as well. They were very old. They probably haven't been touched since Willow Creek. I think her style is a little bit all over the place. She definitely still has some inspiration renovations from the live action. And in the live action, she is in disguise, and she doesn't really tell the villagers that she is this all-powerful enchantress. She presents herself as having clothing that is very layered, maybe a little bit more dirty, maybe not the highest quality, or not even like quality, but perhaps maybe she doesn't have like a ton of money per se. And so they are very plain looking clothes and just like layered, or maybe fitting for whatever environment she immediately needs it for. So obviously for the winter, you need lots of layers for living in the forest and that kind of a thing. So I gave her both looks. She has some of those looks that she wears in the live action. She has her beautiful green enchantress dress. And then she also has some looks that I felt like were really great, considering that she does a lot of gardening. And so she would be at her cave home in the woods by herself a lot of the times, just gardening. And that's what she enjoys doing. So she's got some overalls and some different gloves and things and some options like that. If she wasn't previously in the Disney Save, she is now a part of the Villagers Club. And so she does know all of the Beauty and the Beast characters that live in the village, at least. She knows Belle. Her and Belle are very good friends. And then she knows Beast, obviously. And I think she would know everybody from the castle, but it's also like one of those things where it's not explicitly stated. And it could be a potential that she just kind of doesn't. Like maybe she showed up and she asked for help at the castle, and she ended up only interacting with the Beast before she placed the curse and left. Like there's nothing saying that she necessarily knows all them. She does appear at the end of the movie, and I think she is such a powerful magic user that she is a little bit all-knowing. Like she might watch from a distance, she might kind of know people in that way, but she has some relationships with some of the Beauty and the Beast characters. I didn't go overboard by any means. I feel like she would want less friends anyway, and she would want to just be left alone for the most part anyway. I thought she would really like Maurice, especially if she develops more of a friendship with Belle after the film, which is something that I'm kind of depicting in the Disney Save. I felt like she would really get along with Maurice and probably check in on him. And between all the villagers characters, he might be somebody that she gravitates towards a little bit as well. So all of that stuff taken care of in the update to the Disney Save, which by the time you're seeing this is probably live on my Patreon. A little patch to put in everything that you saw today and all of the renovations, all the character updates, and playtested all ready to go. So that's going to be a 2.25 Henford-On-Bagley patch and include everything you saw today. That also means that everything should be live on the gallery. My gallery ID is TomilynYT, or you can search by hashtag the Disney Save and pretty much everything should come up if you're somebody that places everything manually. And if you need to see where everything goes, on both of my Discords, I have a channel called Disney Save Maps, and that shows you where everything is placed and the names of everything if you're ever confused about where everything goes. And with all that being said, that is going to be the end of today's master renovation video for Henford-On-Bagley. Like I said, the next thing you're going to see from me is Ravenwood. I'm so excited to get into the new world. Let me know all of your thoughts, ideas, everything that you're excited for or not down below. If you'd like to support the Disney Save on Patreon, you can do so by clicking the link in my description box down below or the one at the end of the video. And thank you guys so much for watching today. I will talk to you all in the next one.